Today I'm going to be making my first faux funnel pour soap. I'm kind of following a good part of the procedure that was used by Ariane Arsenault, one of my favorite soap makers on YouTube, and I will certainly post a link to the video of hers that gave me the inspiration for this. I think they're going to end up looking quite different though. Hers was a salt bar that looked more like waves. This one is hopefully going to have the colors and some of the look of a Persian carpet, but it's very much the same method. For my recipe, it's going to be a fairly slow moving recipe, so I should have plenty of time. I'm using castor oil 4%, coconut oil 20%, pig lard 30%, high oleic sunflower oil 25%, and beef tallow 21%. So that'll make a soap of medium hardness, very skin-friendly soap, not terribly sudsy, but adequate, and as I say, should be fairly slow to thicken up. For fragrance, I'm going to be using oud wood fragrance oil, which is from Nurture's soap. It is said not to accelerate or discolor, so that will be good. And then for colors, I'm going to use 3 parts of white, and that'll be a teaspoon of winter white mica in each. These micas are also all from Nurture soap. For black, I'm using black pearl mica. For wine red, red vibrance mica. For deep green, I'm going to use a mixture of emerald green and kombu green. They've changed their combo green a couple of times. This is the original one, which was the really dark one with a lot of black in it. I just still happen to have quite a lot of that around. And then for deep blue, I'm going to use a teaspoon of Klein Blue mica, and for golden yellow, a teaspoon of mimosa yellow. So this is going to be 8 different groups of colors, and that is for a 65-ounce batch, 65 ounces of oil batch of soap. So they should be pretty intense colors, I think. The one other group of materials that I'm planning to put in this soap are plain white sugar at a teaspoon per pound of oil and sodium lactate at the same rate. The sugar should increase the sudsiness of the soap. It's interesting to me that depending on what website you look at, some people will claim that adding sugar speeds up trace, and other sites say that it slows it down, and other sites don't mention that it does anything. It's been my experience that it really does not accelerate, and if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if it does slow your soap down a little. And I nearly always use it on a highly patterned soap that's going to take a while to make. And then the sodium lactate does not accelerate trace. It does harden your soap somewhat. It also makes it very easy to get out of a mold. In this case, because I'm using a paper lined mold, that's not a big issue. If I were using some other surface, it would be much more important. But in any case, it's going to harden the soap somewhat, and I like using it in a soap. I'm going to be using my 15-bar wooden mold from Papa's Woodcrafts on Etsy. I love this mold. It has miter cuts in the sides, so you can cut the soap while it's still in the mold into 15 nice, neat, even bars. But it has to be lined, of course. So I'm using freezer paper, plastic coated freezer paper. And this mold is longer this way than it is this way. As it turns out, the dimensions are right, that if I take my freezer paper across with the long end of the mold going this way, it's a good match for how much I need. I want probably at least 3 inches of paper sticking out over all sides. So I'm turning it shiny side down. By the way, obviously there are a lot of videos on YouTube about how to line a soap mold. And I learned this from somebody on one of those videos, and I wish I knew who it was. I don't remember, so thank you whoever you are. But put it shiny side down, and then holding an edge of it, take your thumbnail and find the inside edge of one wall of the mold. Then just run a crease along there down at the corner, and then hold that corner very firmly. Do the next side and just go all the way around. Again, don't let your paper slip when you change directions. And I usually end up using my index fingernail for the last one. So what I have there now is a nice rectangle that outlines the inner dimensions of the mold. That's exactly what I want. And I can trim this down a little now. And I'm just going to eyeball this. I kind of know how high the walls of that mold are. I want enough beyond the fold that it comes to the top of the mold, over the top, and hangs down a little bit on the outside so I can tape it. But beyond that, it doesn't really matter. I don't want it too long because that makes it hard to fold. So I usually get my tape ready. I'm going to use regular masking tape, and I'm going to need 4 pieces about 1 inch long. And those are going to hold the folded corners together. And then I need 4 more pieces, 4 or 5 inches long. And those are how I'm going to tape the whole thing into the mold. And I don't measure any of this, it's not important at all. Now, I've turned this shiny side up again. So this is the plastic coated side. That is what the soap is going to be against. And so I'm going to fold this edge up. You'll notice when you do this with your fingernail, the crease itself is not an infinitely thin line. It has a definite width to it. And what I want to do is fold to the inside edge of that line, making the floor of the mold here slightly smaller than it would be if I only folded to the outside edge. That makes sure then that this folded liner is going to fit in that mold comfortably. Just make a nice neat crease there. And same thing on all 4 sides. This side's still a little longer than it needs to be, but that's not going to hurt anything. Now, I'll turn it back so the dull side is up and find the corner there where those crossed folds cross each other and pinch that, and then what you want to do is take the fold on this side and the fold on this side and line them up perfectly. Hold that in place, fold that flat, and then you can just fold that corner right over, and that is going to create a vertical wall on your mold. Then tape that newly folded spot down. So that corner is done. And then move on to the next corner. Find where the 2 folds cross. Pinch that. Line up the creases. And fold that over. And then tape it down. Sometimes you have to straighten out those corners a little. if you don't get these little folds lined up just right, then the corner of your liner won't be perfectly square. And so it's not going to fit neatly in your mold, and your corner bar of soap is not going to be quite rectangular. It's going to have a funny angled side to it. So this is the fourth one. Now, if I've done this right, it should just drop right into the mold. And it does. Now, I'm going to take my scissors and cut the corners down to the top of the wooden mold, but not any farther than that, because if you went farther, then your soap would leak out. You have to split it to the edge of the wood. And now I use 8 fingers to hold the liner tightly down in the corner, and then with the palm of my hand I roll that over the top, and with my thumbs I make a nice crease so we've got a good flat wall on this side. And then I'll do that with the next side. And now, while I'm holding these 2 corners down, I can take a long piece of my masking tape and start it on this side of the paper, bring it around, seal it there. So that's holding those 2 corner sides down. The reason I do that is I'm quite a messy soap maker, and my molds have little slops of soap from over the years all over them. And masking tape simply won't stick to them anymore. And I've not found a good way to remove all that soap film. So by sticking tape to paper, bring that around the corner, and again sticking it tape to paper, I don't have to worry about the soap on the mold. So holding that corner down and that corner. Run my tape right around there. And the last one. So that mold is ready to go. Now, you do have a little bit of bowing out here and on all the sides. That really doesn't matter. As long as you're holding those corners very tightly in place and the floor of this is flat, as you put the soap in, just the weight of the soap is going to push that liner out, and you'll get nice, perfectly vertical walls on your outer bars of soap. So that's ready to go. I have my materials assembled. As always, it's important to protect yourself from lye burns. So now that I'm going to be working with lye and then raw soap that has the lye in it, I'm going to wear, in my case, a lab coat. You could wear anything with sleeves, nitrile rubber gloves, and eye protection in the form of goggles. I think these are ready to go. My oils are actually down to 93 Fahrenheit. My lye water, which I just added the sodium lactate to, is at 121. So when I mix those, they'll be a little over 100. Something that I'm hoping will improve the quality of this video over some that I've made in the past. I've noticed there's often a glare on the liquids and then on the soap. So I'm using a circular polarizer, and if that works well, you might want to consider that if you make videos of your soap. Anytime you're doing a pattern, of course, it's important to have everything that you're going to need so you don't have to go looking for something. So I've got a ladle, I have a chopstick I'm going to use for swirling, and I already have my fragrance oil in the oils, I have sugar and sodium lactate in the lye solution. I have my micas all hydrated. One thing I will say about Nurture Soap's Winter White Mica, I like it as a white, but it works like a non-Newtonian fluid, which is kind of like cornstarch does. When you first mix it, it makes a nice smooth mixture, but if you let it sit for a few minutes, it forms this really hard sludge at the bottom that is hard then to get back into solution. So I consider it kind of important to stir it frequently, and especially right before you put the soap batter in. So let's start here. Also, as I've said in the last couple videos, I've switched pretty much from using a stick blender to hand whisking. It takes a little longer, but I'm getting less bubbles in my soap than I used to. And I realize there are people who are very good at using a stick blender and not getting bubbles in their soap, but I'm not one of those people. So I want this to come to a really good emulsion, but not particularly a trace before I put it into the colors. I'm going to want a little bit of trace when I pour, but I don't want it real thick. One of the things that I like about using high oleic sunflower oil is it actually has a higher oleic acid content than olive oil does, and it gives hardly any color to your soap batter. So you can end up with a whiter soap or other light colors. You're not messing with them. The reason this is turning slightly pink is because of the lard in it. There's apparently a preservative in most commercially prepared lard that turns pink when you mix lye with it. That goes away in a few minutes. For this video, I'm showing pretty much everything in real time, and hopefully that would be useful to a beginning soap maker who wants to see exactly how long the process takes and what exactly happens. On the other hand, for those of you who are old hands at this and don't need to see all of that, I will post down in the description the time signature for where each process begins, so you can skip ahead if you want to. This is reaching a pretty good emulsion right now. I think I can distribute it to the colors pretty soon. As expected with this recipe that has quite a lot of lard and sunflower oil and significant amount of tallow, this is not likely to move very fast. It's going to be a nice, slow, easy to work with material. Now that I've mixed them, let's see what the temperature is. 103 Fahrenheit, that's great. Okay. So I'll distribute soap batter to my colors. This is not at all a trace, it's just almost water thin. So I've been using 2 scoops for each of those colors because I want to make more white than the other colors. I'm going to use 3 scoops in these. And I have some extra, so I'll distribute that around. may take a while to stir up, so I may actually speed up the video or skip some in this part. Okay, these are ready to pour. They are still not really at trace, but they're at a very good emulsion. I stirred them quite a long time after I turned the camera off. I'm going to pour them in this order: white, green, white, yellow, black, blue, white, red, and hope to get several cycles out of that. This is a lot like a column pour, except there's no column. I'm just going to pour directly into the center of the mold. I like that dark shade of blue. Color mixing here, which I don't really like. Wish even with these spouts in the pictures I can't get close enough to prevent that. I probably should let it thicken a little more. That would help solve that problem. In fact, I am going to wait a bit for these to thicken a little more. Okay, it's been a few minutes and I stirred them some more. They're still pretty thin, but I'm hoping it'll work better now. Oh yeah, definitely. I'm still going to have to be careful about them sinking in, I think. I'm still getting quite a lot of sinking there. here is what I want. Just that little bit of extra time for thickening has really helped here. The yellow is still trying to sink in. I'm also getting off center with my pour here. I need to be more careful about that. That's the end of my first container of white. I think I'm going to do one more cycle of colors after this. So that's the last of the green. Last of the yellow. I'll use up the black here. going to save just a drop of white to end with. Okay, now I'm going to do a two-directional Taiwan swirl, and then I'm going to do spirals like mini hurricanes among those. So I'll start out fairly far apart. These are maybe 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches stripes, so farther apart than I often do. And then the same thing in the other direction. Now I'm just going to guesstimate the pattern of the size of an individual bar, but I'm going to spiral that inward, and then move it over to the next one and spiral it outward in the opposite direction. These are not going to stay in neat rows, I can already tell. And I think I want to drag some more color through the middle here, just for a little more complication. I think that's kind of cool. What I will do now, as I usually do when I'm using a wooden mold, I'll spray the top with some alcohol. I'll put it into a 170 Fahrenheit or 77 degree Celsius oven for a couple hours to harden it up quickly, and we'll have a look at it tomorrow. Before I do that, I'll show you the surface here. It is the next day, and this soap is ready to be cut. Loosen my tape here. People often ask about this mold from Papa's Woodcrafts. It comes with a knife that fits the mold. So that's very nice for slicing the soap. And I just kind of run it along here until I can feel the next groove. I have one of his molds that also makes 9 bigger bars. I had that one custom made, but this is one of his standard molds that makes 15. And they're, if you fill the mold, they're just over 4 ounces a piece, the individual bars. So there are the 15 bars. with the sodium lactate, that makes this paper come off really easily. Famous last words. Kind of sticking in the middle. Yeah, it's going to come loose. These are still pretty soft. They're manageable, but they certainly would be easily bruised at this point. This is the top surface of some of the cut bars. It reminds me a lot of a peacock swirl, even though it was made in a very different way from those. I think I like it. It's not really what I expected. I was expecting it to have more little spirals in it than are visible. This is some of the cut sides, and then the cut ends. The one on the end there was against the mold wall, whereas the other three were cut. And then on the left you have a bottom that was not trimmed in any way. That's the way it came out of the mold. And then the other one, I've actually shaved, I don't know, maybe a couple millimeters, 1/16 of an inch off of it. So it's starting to show the color. I may shave that a little bit deeper. So it does show color very quickly if you take some of that edge off. So, but there's the top side, obviously the most pretty part.